New York Americans, Bill Dwyer, the bootlegging king. Let's start at the beginning. It's 1925, and Bill Dwyer is the undisputed king of the rum runners in New York City. During Prohibition, when alcohol was illegal, Dwyer built a massive bootlegging operation that generated millions in untaxed cash. His Phoenix cereal beverage company on 10th Avenue wasn't fooling anyone. It was a front for producing illegal beer on an industrial scale. With more money than he knew what to do with, Dwyer did what any self-respecting criminal would do. He bought a hockey team. He purchased the players' rights to Hamilton Tigers, moved them to Madison Square Garden, and renamed them the New York Americans. The NHL, desperate for expansion and legitimacy, didn't ask too many questions about where his money came from. Dwyer ran the Americans exactly like you'd expect a gangster to run a sports team. He threw around obscene amounts of money to attract star players. There were rumors he bribed officials. The Americans became known for their flashy style and wild spending, a direct reflection of their criminal owner. But here's the thing about criminal money. It's inherently unstable. When Prohibition ended in 1933, Dwyer's primary cash flow dried up. By 1937, the Americans were in financial ruin. The final straw came when Dwyer borrowed $20,000 from the team's manager, Red Dutton, supposedly to stabilize the franchise. Instead, Dwyer promptly lost it all in a craps game. That's not just bad business. That's the behavior of a gangster who never learned financial discipline. The NHL was forced to seize control of the team. The Americans limped along until 1942 when they folded completely. The league had learned its first painful lesson about criminal ownership. It might look glamorous at first, but it always ends in disaster. Vancouver Canucks. Thomas K. Scallen, the securities fraudster. When the Vancouver Canucks joined the NHL as an expansion team in 1970, their first owner was Thomas K. Scallen, a Minneapolis businessman who headed Medical Investment Corporation, Medicor. Scallen seemed like the perfect owner to bring professional hockey to Vancouver. He had experience in entertainment as the president of Ice Follies and had the financial backing of a publicly traded company. But Scallen's ownership quickly turned into a nightmare for the franchise and its fans. To finance the $6 million expansion fee, Scallen diverted funds from Medicor to Northwest Sports Enterprises, the company he created to own the Canucks. The problem? He did this without properly disclosing these transactions to Medicor shareholders or the Canadian authorities. By 1973, just 3 years into the Canucks' existence, Scallen's financial house of cards collapsed. He was charged with theft and issuing a false prospectus. The trial revealed that Scallen had transferred $3.5 million from Medicor to Northwest Sports without proper authorization or disclosure. In June 1973, he was convicted and sentenced to 4 years in prison. While Scallen appealed his conviction, the damage was done. He lost control of the Canucks, and the team was sold to local Vancouver businessman Frank Griffiths. Scallen's conviction was eventually reduced to just the false prospectus charge, and his sentence was cut to 1 day in jail plus a fine. The Scallen saga represents one of the earliest examples of securities fraud in NHL ownership. It's particularly notable because it happened during the league's ambitious expansion period in the early 1970s, when the NHL was desperate to place teams in new markets. In their rush to expand, the league failed to properly vet Scallen's financing plan, setting the stage for a criminal scandal that nearly destroyed hockey in Vancouver before it had a chance to take root. Toronto Maple Leafs, Harold Ballard, the tyrant tax evader. Harold Ballard might be the most notorious owner in NHL history. For nearly 2 decades, from 1972 until his death in 1990, Ballard ruled the Toronto Maple Leafs with an iron fist, turning one of hockey's most storied franchises into a laughingstock. But before he became the sole owner of the Leafs, Ballard was convicted of 47 counts of fraud, theft, and tax evasion. The trouble began in the 1960s when Ballard was part of a 3-man ownership group that controlled Maple Leaf Gardens and the team. An investigation revealed that Ballard and his partner John Bassett had been skimming money from the Gardens' operations. They used company funds for personal expenses, including renovations to Ballard's home and even his daughter's wedding reception. In 1972, Ballard was convicted of 47 counts of fraud, theft, and tax evasion involving nearly $205,000, equivalent to about $1.3 million today. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and served 1 year at Millhaven Penitentiary, a maximum security facility, before being granted parole. What makes Ballard's case truly remarkable is that he managed to gain complete control of the Maple Leafs while his criminal case was ongoing. When his partner Stafford Smythe died in 1971, Ballard outmaneuvered the other owners to take control of the franchise. By the time he went to prison in 1973, he was the undisputed owner of the Maple Leafs. After his release from prison, Ballard returned to run the team with a vengeance. He became infamous for his miserly ways, refusing to spend money on players, facilities, or even team photos. He removed the cup holders from seats to save money. He ripped out seats to add advertising. He even had the team's Stanley Cup banners taken down because they blocked his view from his private box. Under Ballard's ownership, the Maple Leafs went from being one of hockey's most successful franchises to one of its most dysfunctional. They failed to make the Stanley Cup Finals during his entire tenure. Star players like Darryl Sittler and Lanny McDonald were traded away in personal feuds. Coaches came and went with alarming frequency. Ballard's criminal past and tyrannical management style make him perhaps the most damaging owner in NHL history. Unlike other criminal owners who were quickly removed once their crimes were discovered, Ballard maintained control of one of the league's most valuable franchises for nearly 2 decades after his conviction. The damage he did to the Maple Leafs took years to repair, and some would argue the franchise has never fully recovered from the Ballard era. Los Angeles Kings, Bruce McNall, the coin dealer. Before there was John Spano, there was Bruce McNall, the man who brought Wayne Gretzky to Los Angeles and nearly destroyed the Kings in the process. McNall started as a rare coin dealer who built a fortune through increasingly shady deals. By the mid-1980s, he had enough money to purchase the Los Angeles Kings. In 1988, he shocked the hockey world by acquiring Wayne Gretzky from the Edmonton Oilers in a trade that changed the sport forever. On the surface, McNall was a marketing genius who transformed hockey in Southern California. He changed the Kings' colors to silver and black to match the Raiders, moved them into the gleaming new Great Western Forum, and made hockey cool in LA. With Gretzky leading the way, the Kings reached the Stanley Cup Finals in 1993, and hockey exploded in popularity across the Sun Belt. Behind the scenes, however, McNall was running a massive criminal enterprise. He used fake collateral to borrow over $236 million from banks. He created phantom coin collections, forged appraisals, and lied about his assets. When one loan came due, he'd simply take out another, bigger loan to cover it. A classic Ponzi scheme. The House of Cards collapsed in 1994. McNall was forced to sell the Kings and eventually pleaded guilty to bank fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 70 months in federal prison. What makes McNall's case particularly disturbing is how deeply embedded he was in the NHL power structure. This wasn't some outsider who snuck past league security. This was the chairman of the Board of Governors, a man who helped select Gary Bettman as commissioner. His criminal activity went undetected for years while he was making critical decisions about the future of the league. New York Islanders, John Spano, the great imposter. Fast forward to 1996. The New York Islanders, once a dynasty in the early 1980s, had fallen on hard times. Owner John Pickett was desperate to sell, and along came a savior, a Texas businessman named John Spano, who claimed to be worth hundreds of millions. There was just one problem. John Spano wasn't telling the truth. Spano didn't have hundreds of millions. He barely had thousands. He was a con man who pulled off one of the most audacious frauds in sports history. His plan was breathtaking in its simplicity and stupidity. Forge bank documents, lie about his wealth, buy the team with money he didn't have, and then somehow figure it out later. Incredibly, it worked, at least for a while. The NHL's vetting process was so pathetic that Commissioner Gary Bettman and the Board of Governors approved the sale without verifying Spano's finances. On April 7, 1997, Spano took control of the Islanders after making an initial payment of just $16.8 million, money he had fraudulently obtained through bank loans. For 4 months, Spano lived the dream. He attended games in the owner's box. He gave interviews about his plans for the franchise. He acted like a billionaire. But when it came time to make the remaining payments, Spano started a comedy of errors that would be hilarious if it weren't so pathetic. He sent checks that bounced. He claimed wire transfers were coming, then blamed banks for delays. He forged faxes from banks. He even tried to pay his rent with bad credit cards while out on bail. The whole house of cards collapsed when Newsday reporter John Valenti started investigating Spano's background and discovered he was a fraud. The FBI arrested Spano and charged him with bank fraud, wire fraud, and forgery. He eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to nearly 6 years in federal prison. But the story doesn't end there. After his release, Spano continued his criminal ways, getting convicted of mail fraud in 2005 and theft and forgery in 2014. All told, his various sentences added up to 22 years in prison and over $12 million in restitution. The Spano scandal was a complete humiliation for the NHL. It exposed the league's laughably inadequate vetting process and raised serious questions about who was minding the store. The Islanders, meanwhile, became a punchline. The team so desperate for an owner, they didn't bother to check if he actually had any money.